Nasa
Okay, well, a pleasant good morning and welcome to this session this morning. We have been chatting off air, right, concerning our upcoming audit as well as some of the requirements of the NEBOSH project. And we have discussed as well also some of our past students that would have gained the qualification and where they are in Trinidad here and maybe where they are worldwide, right? I've also mentioned to you, if I was younger, I would have, done my NEBOSH and look to leave Trinidad. But that's just me, right? And of course, NEBOSH is also registered and recognized in Canada. If you have this qualification and you apply, you can get what is called the fast track system. They kind of fast track your application then because remember, Canada doesn't have a president, right? The head of state of Canada is the King of England, Prince Charles, right? This year I'm going to the UK, hopefully keeping my fingers crossed. I was checking it out this week. I'm trying to stay close to Buckingham Palace, a couple of hotels around there, right? I'm trying to. I've been to the UK before, but I've slept in London, to be honest, but it was like a business trip and I kind of treated it like that. I actually didn't walk around. And I so love the UK. My degree and stuff, my other degrees are from there as well, right? But I spent more time at where NEBOSH is at, which is Leicester, than I spent in London. This time around, though, I want to kind of spend some time in London and, as they would say, be the tourist kind of person anyway, right? Okay, so just a part four of the project. Um, so part four, I mean, the simplest way to tell you, I'll still finish this by 9:30, is you just read this and you do one like it. Part four, you have to put the plan review date, period with reasoning. So here have the company policies, you review the risk assessment at least every 12 months. I therefore set the review date for 12 months' time, the 25th of April, 2023. Of course, this is NEBOSH's project. This is not mine. This is the version we have, right? So just do that for yourself and you're good to go. The only catch here, remember, I like to kind of highlight to you also in case you're making notes, you can't miss it. In case you're making notes, you can't miss it, right? The only catch here is the review date must be a review date. It must be a date. It must be a date. It must be a day, month, and year. It cannot be, so please write it down. It must be date, month, and year. Yes, so Marsha, we'll talk about the exam in a bit, right? I wanted to, but I kind of get just if you want to know the exam, but you all are not going to finish for August. You're going to finish for September. We're still in chapter 3, right? So I don't think it's wise forcing you all to write the August exam. The exam is really the 7th. That's all I wanted to talk to. But as we all know, we can say it one time. We're not gonna finish, right? We could if we have some makeup classes, but this is the 20th of July. It's best we take our time. Yeah, exam will be the first week in September. I think that would be the best thing to do. Right? We can talk about it a bit off air, right? I did apply for the exam and the exam date. I thought it would have been later in August, but it isn't. It's the 7th of August. Looking at it on the board here now, there's my eyes looking this way. And because of that, I think the best thing is to take our time. We have chapter 3, 4 to finish, and then take our time in the project, and then you write the exam the first week in September, the first Wednesday. We'll finish before the 25th of August. I have checked it out. You'll finish probably 3 weeks into August and you may have a free Saturday or something, which may be the Saturday before the exam, right? All right. So the catch I was telling you, the catch is that you must have the day. I just put in D, right? The date, the month, and the year. They don't give anything else correct. Like if you say the review date is in 6 months' time, they'll give it that wrong. Please listen to the instructions. You must put the date, the month, and the year, like what you see in here. Right? All right. How the risk assessment findings will be communicated and who you need to tell. So you read this and you write one like it. So I would arrange a meeting with the finance director to go through and agree the actions in the risk assessment. I would then provide a summary of the findings and actions for the workshop and store manager. These will be emailed initially with follow-up meetings if required. The findings of the risk assessments will be included in the next available toolbox store where we'll also advise the workers on the actions that are to be taken. A summary of the risk assessment and actions to be taken will also be posted on the company's intranet that all workers have access to. Read that 3 times and just write it over, right? There isn't any catch there. Or the only catch it have there is you need to say how and who. That's the only catch, like how the information will be communicated. You could think of verbal ways if you're making more notes. You could think about email ways or, document ways. You could think about notice boards and memos and all those things, right? And you need to say who you need to tell, right? So if you read this, you'll actually see they said, um, I will then provide a summary of the findings and actions for the workshop and store manager, right? And then you will have to say, I would arrange a meeting with my CEO, whoever you said was your responsible person in part one, right? And that's it for this piece. The last piece here. How will you follow up on the risk assessment to check that the actions, how will you follow up on the risk assessment to check that the actions have been carried out? So you could just read this again, but there's actually just one catch. I mean, all of them have a little catch with it, right? Date, month, year, who and how, or how and who, and this one has a little catch too. But let's read it. And I mean, like if you follow this, you'll actually pick up the catch now. But as you read it, I'll actually highlight what the catch is, and the catch was this here. But if you just do it, you would have just covered the catch already. If you just do one like this, then you'll cover the catch. You'll actually cover what you had to do then, right? All right, this one, how will you follow up on the risk assessment, right? So I will set diary reminders for roughly 10 days before the action is due to be completed. I will speak to the responsible person for each for each of the actions to find out the progress against each action. Should the action not be on target for completion, I'll find out the reasons why. Example, is it down to finances or other resource issues, such as workers' time, to complete the actions again? If any action look like they are not going to be completed on time, I will speak to the finance director, which is the responsible person, to see if additional resources is available for the action. Actions that are very overdue, i.e. completion is more than 6 months late, will be referred to the managing director via the finance director. So the only catch here, I mean, other than reading and changing this, is they wanted to address overdue actions. So you have to mention that. You have to mention like any overdue actions, will be discussed or will be mentioned to the CEO, So the catch here is that they look for this thing called overdue action. So when you write it, again, if you just follow this one, you would have covered the overdue action. But the only catch here is that some people leave out the overdue action. You'll say, okay, I would follow up. But then what happens if like 3 months pass and, and if you want to know what actions they're talking about the action in column 5. Like when you said training should be done, like what would be the consequence then, right? So if any overdue actions, you can say this could be passed to your manager, which may be passed to the CEO, right? To have a call to those employees and to find out how the progress is going against the risk assessment, column 5 anyway, right? And that's your project, right? Like I said, easy hard. Easy hard is the way to describe it. But if you do yours, and when you're doing yours, you have the sample next to you and you have my notes next to you, there's really little ways you could mess that up, right? As an adult, then I don't see there's ways of you messing that up. But if you just start to run then in your own way without the sample and the guidance, which is kind of crazy, right? That's like going somewhere, but you haven't no idea which part you're going, right? And you didn't check it on, Waze or whatever have you, right? But if you have the map, then if you have the sample and the guidance, there's no way you can mess that up, right? And if you do, well, we are here to look at your draft just to give you a quick feedback anyway, right? And again, there's little way to mess that up now. The only way to mess it up after that is if after the instructions, you still want to do your own thing. In that case, you could probably just tell me you want to do your own thing. We have a school fund. You could donate some of your monies to the fund instead of trying to, no, honestly, I don't know if I told you all that, folks. It's not a joke, right? For many of you who know me, like I said, I came through the ranks. I came through from a worker perspective from since I was in high school, right? I worked in the oil companies in Trinidad and Tobago. At that time was called Petrotrin. But don't be fooled, I wasn't doing anything fancy. I was cutting grass and I was doing pipe fitting, right? I was in the oil tanks. I was in the pits. When they talk about confined space, I was inside of the tank, right? And that's where I came from. And the point of this story is that it has taken me a long time. I may not look that old, but I am kind of there. And anyway, the long and short is that I am in the process now of building my own building. For those who know, the office is not the building. And those of us who know us before the pandemic too, we have a building down in Riverside Drive, but that's not really my building either. In San Fernando, right? Riverside Drive, San Fernando. I think that's where Adnan had known me from. He met me at UWI. Adnan is one of my old students here, right? So yeah, this is not a joke. I am in the process of I have my building plans. It's going through approval. It has gotten through approval with Tongue and Country, and it's at regional cooperation right now. So if you all have money to waste and you don't want to pass your project, you just want to do your own thing, just come and just say making a donation to the school fund. I would gladly accept it because, like I said, once we get the funding approval, we want to start building, we want to start working on our own building. And it's right in San Fernando, it's in Philippines, it's right after, if you all know where Rituals is at. But for those in Guyana, Rituals is like a Starbucks, right? It's a piece of land right on the road there. It's a good location. And if you all have monies, to waste and not follow instruction, please just donate to the school fund in that sense, right? If you all feel I was joking, I wasn't joking. Anyway, I want you all to please follow instructions. Imagine how nice it'll be when we say everybody pass. You know how I'll be talking about this class afterwards? Like I would talk about some of my students. I'll be talking about you all for years to come. All right, folks, let's get back into some theory. I could get a book if you all want because I might just check the book page for you all. Just give me a minute. So I had given you all this PowerPoint. I did check. This is one of the PowerPoints. I made you all the PowerPoints for chapter 3. So this is one of the PowerPoints you have already. This picks up on the heels of the risk assessment. This is still chapter 3, as you see. 3.6, 3.7, 3.8, 3.9. The revision here was the 5 steps in the risk assessment. That's the last theory class we had. It's not hard for you to find. It's right on your WhatsApp group. You could go back and you'll find it, right? But let me just grab a book. The book's on the other side here, and I will tell you what page we are on, right? All right. So just on the heels of the risk assessment, if you go back to your theory, so what you all have to do, right? You all have to keep doing the project behind the scenes, and then you have to submit. But then the work continues then, right? Until we wrap up the course anyway. So this is right on 3.6, I think it said, right? Let me see. It is first piece of basically just by the table. You see the table with the risk assessments. So we need to go back. You see, okay, wait, if you could find the matrix in your textbook, the 5 steps to the risk assessment, and which is why this was the revision. If you have your book, you can pick it up on page 33. It's on the slide before, but remember actually in the slide, right? The last slide have it. The 5 steps in the risk assessment, page 30. In your textbook, page 330. I don't know if you're learning by heart as yet. I don't know if you remember why I said to learn it by heart as well. But if you didn't remember, just go back and listen to the video, right? So this lesson is picking up from that. So right after the risk assessment, which is all the steps, right? They talk about controls then, right? You could get your books, I guess, to maybe page right after the matrix, this big colorful thing in the page after that, right? Because remember the idea of a risk assessment. So you're on page 36, 37 then, right? 36, 37. So the idea of a risk assessment, and if I don't have your book, remember it on the slide. The idea of a risk assessment is not to say the risk is high. The idea of risk calculation then is not, I'll put anywhere in my book, right? Let's put it aside because let's face on my desk. the idea of a risk assessment, like when you say likelihood by severity of something happening, the idea wasn't to calculate the risk enough. Anybody remember what's the idea? What's the idea in doing a risk assessment? Or what's the point then in doing a risk assessment? What's the point in doing a risk assessment? To say the risk was, let me say 4 by 5. What's the point in doing a risk assessment? Anybody? What's the point in doing a risk assessment? What's the moral part of doing a risk assessment?
To reduce the possibility of hazards as uh, reasonably practicable.
Very good. Yeah. So the idea of a risk assessment is not really to say 20, you know. The idea is that if the risk is seen to be high, remember the idea for safety is to save, somebody, right? So the idea of a risk assessment, when you say high, right, your job as a safety is to stop the job, right? If the risk is high, and to put measures in place to reduce the risk because that's your position, safety. You're trying to save somebody's life, you're trying to keep the job place safe, right? So you stop the job and you put controls in place. So therefore, right on the heels of the matrix, and that's why I show you the textbook, right on the heels of the matrix, the next thing they show is exactly how to control the risk, right? So how to control the risk. Just give me a minute. You could finish up this word for me. Let me admit somebody there. How to control the risk. And they are saying there are many types of controls. You have technical controls, you have behavioral controls. Like a behavioral control is like job instructions. Like a behavioral control is like the instructions that says, like no speeding. That's a behavioral control, right? A behavioral control is supervision. A behavioral control is like they say no smoking because you're in a gas plant, right? So they want you. So there may be technical controls like there may be sprinkler systems and some things you mightn't understand, like inerting systems and stuff. So those are technical controls. But the behavioral controls is you, right? Like no smoking, no cell phone use. Don't use the cell phone if you're down, on the plant. You could use it lunchtime if you're in the lunchroom. There are some companies like Atlantic don't allow you to use it during the course of and even some of the companies I met in Guyana, you couldn't use the cell phone when you were in the plant. Then if you were walking in the pedestrian walkway, you could use it. But so those are behavioral controls. Procedural controls could be like a job instruction or a permit, right? So to get into a confined space, you need to isolate the space, make sure that they have no gas coming in, no oil coming in. So that's a procedural control. So the idea when you stop the unsafe job is not, like I said, when you do the risk assessment, and it's not just to say, okay, the risk is 25 out of 25, and you happy with that. No. The point of doing the risk assessment is to reduce the risk, is always to keep people safe, right? All right. So I'm moving on. If anybody wants, I don't know if that must stay on this slide. Let me see if I could get it to go down, right? So if you want, I want you to watch something. So there's a law for it. Remember, they don't really test law. So we could just say there's a law for that. There's a law for doing a risk assessment. Look at here, right? The law is the Management of Health and Safety Drug Regulation 1999. In fact, if you check your book, it actually says regulations 3 talked about doing a risk assessment, but you may have to go back to risk assessment to find that, right? You could just take my word for it too. Of course, you all know we good. I wouldn't lie to you. If you watch page 29, you'll see it. Legal requirement. Look at there. It's the same law. Legal requirement. Look the law there. The Management of Health and Safety Drug Regulation states that you need to do a risk assessment, right? But remember, NEBOSH, if you want, you can highlight that, right? That's up to you. But NEBOSH don't really ask you that anymore now. Because they know it's an open book exam. If they say, what is the law for doing a risk assessment? You will all Google it, right? So that's what they're not asking you, what is the law anymore. But what I was telling you is like doing a risk assessment is the law. And that's what you're seeing here. And if doing a risk assessment is the law, well then, what's something? If doing a risk assessment is the law, right? Well then, controlling the risk must be part of the law too. Watch it right here. Because the point of doing a risk assessment wasn't to say 20 or 25. The point was to keep the damn place safe, right? So if the law said do a risk assessment, but then the law must have said to control the risk as well. So you see it here, employers, self-employed need to introduce preventative and protective measures to control the risk identified by the risk assessment. So this is not an exam question. This is just how it is then. That's what I'll tell you on the left-hand side here, right? Doing a risk assessment is the law, but then if the point wasn't to calculate and say 20, but then what's the point? The point was to control, but then the law must also say control. And look at right here for you to see. But this is not an exam question. So let's go to the exam. The truth is, speaking of exam question, they don't really like, I mean, I can't think of a question that have this on it. Page 36, 37, 38, 39, all they're going, 40, all they're going, doesn't really have a past paper, right? But I think this knowledge is important because remember, you will have to use it on your project. Anybody could say where? Which part you have to use this on your project? Let me just give you a hint. So I'll stop this slide here. Which part you have to
Legal
use this?
rationale.
No,
The
there's
legal
another
rationale.
legal rationale. No, but where do you need the hierarchy of control on your project? I'll give you a further clue. It's on the
In the
table,
column.
in the fourth column. Yeah,
In
right?
the
Look at,
column.
yeah, in the fourth column. In case you forget that, let me just one show it. I wonder if I could. How do I do that? Let me see. Share. If you go back to your guidance, I'm trying to see where I put it, right? If you go back to your guidance, that's not the guidance, right? It's just a fine. Let me see where I put it. Yeah, if you go back to your guidance, which is this time if you see this part one guidance for learners, are you all seeing that? Okay. If you go back to the guidance and you come to the part with the risk assessment in it, you'll see what they say for column 4. Look at it. I read this for you all already, but as we do in hierarchy of control, I want to make it make sense because I cannot remember a question on the hierarchy of control. It may have one, but if I can remember, it means it didn't come. Right? If you read column 4, right? What further control actions might be needed? Column 4. Remember, you must take account of the hierarchy of controls and the principles of prevention in deciding on further controls. What's your book now? Watch page 36, 37. You'll see the same heading, principles of prevention, hierarchy of control. So you need to take account of these two things then. And as I was telling you, a lot of students, what they do, when you write the fourth column, when you write the controls, or if I could scroll down here with you. Yeah, like when you write the fourth column, what the examiners want to see is like they want to see like you kind of match this up to something from the hierarchy of control then. Like when they say monitor system to set up to ensure that vibration tools are not used for an extensive time. So if they say a monitoring system, if you watch page 37, and they want to use the hierarchy of controls, a monitoring system will fall under what type of control? Watch page 37. If you do have your book, I'll have to go back to this slide, right? But I can show them for you.
Technical control.
Right, but looking at page 37, they have elimination. So they're setting up a monitoring system fall under elimination, substitution, engineering control, administrative control, or PP, a monitoring system. But this monitoring system is not a piece of equipment. It's just to ensure that you're not using the tool for a long time then. So where does that fall? Does it fall under eliminate? Well, that's eliminate is wrong, so we can knock off eliminate.
Administrative.
It falls under administrative, and that's what they expect for you to do. If you do that, no examiner will give you it wrong. What I was telling you last week, right? I have seen some examiners, well, say to students then like it didn't match it up and they fail them for that. And the reason why they cite The examiners and I'm talking about and not me. The examiners cite, look, it's part of the requirement. You know, they said remember. And like I was saying, whenever somebody tell you remember, it means they think you're going to forget, right? Like if you're going to the grocery or the supermarket, right? We say, like when I was in Guyana, when you tell someone you're going to the grocery, they have no idea what you're talking about. But they say supermarket, right? So if you're going to the supermarket and you know someone said, don't forget the bug spray, right? Or remember the bug spray. Because I remember dengue going around, right? So, you know, so you know, like that's important then when they say remember the bug spray. Like of everything else, you know, the sugar, the rice, the flour, but remember the bug spray, right? So that's why it's important now. So that's why the examiners and them they're looking for that. So that's I told you this whole story here, not to really tell you about the buy box. Well, of course you should, but really to know that the examiners looking for that, then they're looking for you to assign the word next to it, right? So that's the point. I think that's what that fits in into today's class because as I mentioned, I can't remember like a full past paper, right? But you know, I could see this fit. Well, not see this. I mean, we could all see this according to the rock for Adnan there, right? You know, a blind Stevie Wonder could see. A blind Stevie Wonder could see that they're asking you for the hierarchy of controls. Look, it was on the guidance, right? So you know the accent for it, please put it, right? So anyway, I wanted to tell you, in case you need, I mean, I don't know if you need any more explanation than that. But it have more explanation. So that's the good news. It have more explanation, right? So the more explanation is really for you, it's not really for the assessment or nothing like that, right? So the more explanation is like, is like, what is these things? What is the principles of prevention? And what is the hierarchy of control? Like, what is it, right? And the idea with them, this is your information. The idea is that these two things are like a format then for reducing the risk. So with the hierarchy, once the risk is 20, if we can go back to an example like that, and we could probably use a kind of real example, like if somebody was on a scaffold, let's say a makeshift scaffold. I have used this for you all before when you all did your first class at me, right? Let's say somebody was on a makeshift scaffold here leaning over, right? And well, leaning over in a haphazard manner anyway. That foot didn't come on the way it's supposed to come on. But you get the idea, right? So the person probably stooping down or receiving a sheet of galvanized or something from somebody lower down here, right? So if you do the assessment for that and it turns out to be 20, what they were saying then is like what the hierarchy is and what the principles of prevention is kind of like a way for reducing the risk then, right? So the first thing you try to do is to eliminate, right? And that's why they say the fourth column must have 5 controls in it. The fourth column should have a minimum of 5 controls in it, right? And if you remember that. So you find a way to eliminate this work then, right? So then you can say stop the activity. And in your countries, they could have like maybe you could use like a mechanical high-up to carry this sheet of galvanized or whatever it was. It was a pipe or something to the top there, or wherever it have to go, right? So that's eliminate. Substitute, change the characteristic of the hazard. Now that substitute mightn't work here. Substitute works very good for chemicals. Substitute works very good for chemicals. Like if you have like a, you know, like a highly flammable substance, you could change it for a less flammable substance, right? If something was lead base, you could change it for something that's water based, right? So substitution works very good for chemicals, right? Engineering controls work very good for technology. Like if you could purchase something. So like with this example here, you could probably say like you know, like trying to think what can purchase here for help this out. Maybe some kind of lever system, some kind of mechanical arm again could be purchased or rented. That may be engineering controls to carry the galvanized or the roofing materials to top of the building, right? Administrative controls is anything to do with procedures, supervision, training, procedures, time, shift work, all of those things is administrative control. And PPE should be easy. PPE shouldn't be hard for you. If you say the worker should have on, like a harness, and he should have on proper gloves. All of those are controls, right? If you put a harness on him and a restraining device on him, he wouldn't. Well, it's not as if he wouldn't fall, but if he fall, he wouldn't hit the ground because remember he would have on, he or she would have on a restraining device then, right? Like a harness or something, right? So that's how they mean, to use the hierarchy of control. I don't know if you'll get it. So the hierarchy and the principles is kind of the same thing, right? And so if you wonder, well, why do they have two? I cannot answer that question, right? The law is there. It have two formats then. You could think of this, if you have any issues with it. Again, this is not really an exam question. This is just explaining to you what the principles of preventions are and what the hierarchy is. That you could think of this as it's like two formats to do the same thing. Right? It's like two formats to do the same thing. You could think of it as maybe two roads then to come into San Fernando, Trinidad, or two ways or two roadways to get into Georgetown. Was there many ways to get into Georgetown, but it's the main highway, there's the main way to get into San Fernando. The main way to get into Port of Spain is via the highway. But again, if you're living in town, it may have the Diego Martin way, whatever have you, right? So you could think of this as at the end of the day, it achieves the same thing. What's something? When they say eliminate in the hierarchy, the principles of prevention have it as avoid. It's kind of the same thing. It's like two roads to get to the same destination. Doesn't matter the road. So you could say avoid, and that's okay. And you could say hierarchy of control, eliminate, and that's also okay. Watch another one, right? Watch this one, right? And tell me what this one sounds like. Watch this one. Substitute is the next word here, but in the principles of prevention, read this one for me. It says what? Replace the dangerous by the what?
Less dangerous.
Yeah, and that sounds like what? That sounds like substitute. Most people most people go with these words, and I'll tell you why just now. I'll tell you why most people just go with the hierarchy, right? Then they have adapt to technical progress. Well, if it's technical progress, that's the same as engineering controls, right? Anyway, so finally, let me tell you the story. So let me just wrap this up. So do you understand? Let me just wrap up today's work for now, right? That once you do a risk assessment, I lost my page, right? Once you do a risk assessment, the idea is not to say the risk is high and then you're happy with that. You go back in your office and the risk is high. No. When the risk is high, you have to reduce the risk. And we did say there's a law for that. Look at right it. This is always the law. And I'd gone back, I'll show you back to the page where the law was first mentioned is page 29, right? And what I was saying is if the law said do a risk assessment, and the law must say control it too. And that's what you saw here. Right? So the next thing in control now, what they were saying, there were two formats to follow. You can either follow the principles of prevention format, and the words are kind of similar, or you could follow the hierarchy of control format. Anyone you follow is okay. But I was going to tell you now, most students prefer the hierarchy of control. It's kind of like one word, now, like one word sums it up, like elimination. Instead of saying try to avoid, like one word says it all and eliminate. Substitute. Here it have replace the dangerous by the non-dangerous. But in this one, you have substitute, right? So most people prefer the hierarchy of control. And the only thing I'll tell you here again is that I think the examiners prefer it too. And there's some deeper things I'm not telling you here, right? Because it's not the correct level. But anyone you put will be correct, but as most people prefer the hierarchy of controls for level 3. The degree, though, they kind of hold them to this one. And there's a whole story, which I don't have time to tell you, but I'll just tell you a piece of it. There's a whole story here about which came first, the chicken or the egg. Really stop and think about that question. Which came first? Was it the chicken or was it the egg? And which came first? Was it the principles of prevention or was it the hierarchy of control? The point is, that's not the discussion for this class. That's for the degree students. The point is, for now, you have two controls and both of them are available. They're like two roads to get into your destination. Whichever one you use is okay. More degree students are encouraged to use the principles of prevention because it's harder. It's like a deeper level. And then more level 3 students are encouraged to use the hierarchy of control, right? So that's all the stories there. Tell me what you think. This part is finished. If you check your book, we are going on to something else now. It's the same chapter now. We are actually going into now an administrative control. We're actually going into one of those controls now, right? So if you have any questions, let me clear this slide a bit. I think from next week, what we can start doing, right? Next week is the last, no, yeah, next week is the last Saturday in July. Just now, for those of us, I guess, in Trinidad and Parang will start to play just now, 2024. By September, there is yeah. Anyway, do you all have any questions, folks? And anybody on YouTube, anybody, Parang is a kind of traditional Christmas music, you know, this part of the island anyway, or this part of the world anyway. Folks, any questions? We have 22 persons on. Have you all understood? I think the main thing to understand, besides the understanding, is you need to use the hierarchy of control in your project, right? Anybody, any questions? If not, let's move on. We're gonna go outside of the page 2 just now. Let's see if you have any questions. We're gonna get into one of the further controls, which is the administrative control, right? So here we just have this is just a slide. I'm just gonna read this out, right? Sources of information inside of a company. You, the intranet, company's risk assessment, your data from inspections, your audits, your maintenance records. Sources of information external to a company, the law, ECOPs, guidances, internet, IT sources, enforcing authorities, consultants, different institutes around the world, the European Union, the HSE, the Health and Safety Executive, law cases, journals, the SHP magazine, the HSE Bulletin, International Labour Organization, right? Remember, not everything is exam and not everything could come for exam, but some things is for you. Something is when you pass, you remember some things then, right? And you also remember the HSE website is a great source of information, free. There are lots of booklets on it, free for you. Anything you want to find, like ACOPs and guidances for your project, you can get it on the HSE website. Long after you have finished the course in your career, anything you want to know, you could find out about it, right? There's one more I want to mention here. Well, two more for two reasons, and I'll make the reasons kind of short, right? So one of them is the SHP. If you don't know what that is, that's a free magazine. Well, it's not totally free, but you can get free copies. You can get like last month copy on Google, right? Look up at a copy of it here. This magazine is written by IOSH, the parent company to NEBOSH. And if you wonder why must I even waste my 1 minute and look for this magazine? Well, it is the main magazine for health and safety in the world. It's kind of like if you're into fitness, you're probably into muscle and fitness as that magazine. Well, I don't know if anybody look at magazines anymore, but we all look at YouTube and TikToks and stuff like that. So, if you're into that, then if you're into fashion, there'll be like a couple of good sites there, right? But yeah, like there's a magazine then for the ladies, then like Cosmopolitan, there are magazines that may be online now. And the SHP magazine is also online and is the #1 magazine for health and safety professionals worldwide. So that's one. And if that doesn't float your boat, well, I'll tell you another reason why they should go and get it. I have students that get it, but my diploma students get it every month and they put it on their chat. Well, one of the reasons why is, please listen to this. I'm trying to find one on Google for yourself. And if you get it, how I know you'll get it. You'll put it in the group chat for me. Whoever gets it, please put it in the group chat, right? So One of the reasons is for you, and I said one of the reasons is to keep up to date because this is the main magazine. But if that doesn't interest you, for some strange reason, another reason is that a quarter of that magazine is dedicated to vacancies in the UK. Not a page. A quarter of that magazine is dedicated to vacancies in the UK. Right? Before the pandemic, when I had that magazine, students used to buy it. They could buy it online, right? But when I had the magazine, right, what used to happen, that magazine used to be like in demand. Like when we bring it to the school, which is not in the office, and we bring it to the school, every class would want to see that magazine because there'll be job opportunities in the UK then, right? So today it's online, you can get it for yourself. Please check it out. If anybody gets it, put it in the group chat. Don't take my word for it too. Look at the jobs, see what you're seeing, and you would see NEBOSH certificate. Just give me 1 minute and I'll be back with you all. Let me see if we can tell you the page. No, I can't tell you the All right, thanks for that minute there, folks. Okay, so we could go on saying to you all, anybody have any questions? If you have your book, you can turn a bit forward. You'll see Safe Systems of Work. It's on page, it's a heading, it's a big heading. Page 50. Safe Systems of Work, page 50. And we'll
2.6.
talk about, oh, sorry, you have it on a different page?
No, I was, yeah, same 50, 3.6.
Yeah, 3.6. Yeah. Well, I have a new stack of books now that I brought. This stack. So sometimes when you buy a new stack, this is like for the June class I have. The pages follow out a sync, but it's the same content, but I think it's the same page anyway, right? All right, Safe Systems of Work, right? So let's have a read of this. And there are, I mean, like 1 or 2 questions on this. I don't know if there's a trend, but it probably is not a trend. Right. Remember, NEBOSH have exam every month, right? So if you check 12 months for the year, so that's 12, and you have 5 years so far since the paper gone online. Since the pandemic, then the pandemic was 2020, right? So 21, 22, 23, 24. But 2020 was a year, so it had exam in 2020, right? So if you say 12 exams for the year, that's almost 60 exams, right? Close to about, probably a little bit less, right? Because we started in 2024. But there have been 2 questions on this so far. So I don't know if that's a trend or not. I don't think it's a trend because I don't see these questions in every paper, but it could have one, but we ain't reached it yet, right? There's something a little bit more famous here though, but we mightn't reach it today. If you have your book, I can show you it. But that'll be next week class. We mightn't reach it today, right? There's something a little bit more famous than when I say famous for exam, and not famous for me or anything like that. Not famous for the work world, just famous for exam. Something is a bit more famous than Safe Systems of Work. If you keep turning that page 3.6, you come up to 3.7, you'll see permit to work. And permit is a bit more popular. It's not on every paper either, but it have more permit questions than it have Safe Systems of Work questions. You can keep that in mind for next week, right? It have regular permit questions, but not often, or not in every paper, but you have regular permit questions. You may have 2 Safe Systems of Work questions in the last 50 to 60 exam. But let's do it anyway, because what you'll see, those of us with the book, right? What you'll see is that a permit to work is a safe system of work, if you can see that. But it's like a special kind. And we mightn't reach that kind today, right? But let's do the foundation one first anyway. So safe systems of work, I'll read this out. So what is that phrase? Remember, that's a phrase. They say it's the integration of personnel, articles, and substances in a laid out, right? A laid out and considered method of working, which takes into account the risk to employees as well as non-employees to ensure that all steps, there's a reason why I'm pausing on some words, and if you have it, you could underline it, right? These are the things that's actually selling out what a safe system of work is, right? I'll read it again for you, that ensure that all steps necessary for safe working have been anticipated and implemented. I'll read it again. A safe system of work is the integration of personnel, articles, and substances in a laid out. If you want, you could take some sub-notes in it. A laid out means it have a format. If you want, it probably in the book already too. Before we come to it on the slide now, it have a format. When they say laid out, it means it have a way to do it, right? So it's a laid out. If you want, you could watch page 52. Yeah, developing a safe system of work, page 52, because I ain't reached it yet, right? But you see, it have a format. They actually give an acronym for it. It's called SREDIM. Well, so people pronounce it, right? SREDIM. SREDIM. So it have a format. The format is, the S is select the task. Next one, record the steps. And that's when I reach the word step, I slow down, right? Takes into account the risk to employees as well as non-employees to ensure that all steps, I slow down because that's part of the format. The format have the steps in it, right? So you select a task. Do you want me to change the slide? I have it on the slide and let me show you it on the slide. You'll probably understand it better if I just show you what I have on the slide. Let me just show you the end of it. Sometimes it's good to go to the end before you start. Sometimes, not all the times in life. Sometimes it's good to go to the end. You know, like, no, that's a good thing. You ever think about, folks, have you ever stopped to think about, you ever think about what did it feel like to be where you are, like what to be where you want to be there? You know, they say that's part of creating, for those of us who believe in manifestation and stuff like that, right? You ever stop to think about what it feel like to hold your certificate in your hand? Stop to think about what your life would be like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, with your career. Or I mean, if that was a goal or a vehicle or house or land, and see yourself there. See it. See yourself there. I used to do it. You probably don't want to hear all the stories again, but yeah, I used to do it. I still do it. I will tell you, I have a billion. I see myself in my billion every day. You all don't see it, but I see it. So what will it be like with your qualification when you get in that job, when you get in that, when you see that the money worries you have then, the money worries you have is behind you, right? And folks, this is not just for education. This is for whatever you want in life. If you want a new business, you want to open your own business, right? Go and do it, right? See it, go and do it, right? Anyway, I was saying this sometimes it's good to start at the end. So what I said, I will show you this now, because if you see this, so a safe system of work, this is the end slide. Watch it there, that's the end slide there, right? Then permit to work, right? So a safe system of work is a JSA. And if you watch it, watch what it says. The first thing you do is select the task. So we start from the end. The book says select the task. And on a JSA, you put on the task. I put here, changing a spare tire on the busy highway. The next thing to do is what? What's the next thing in the book? Record the steps or stages of the task. Stage 1, loosen the nuts. Right? Next thing, evaluate the risk associated with each step. So you're seeing it? You start from the end and you sometimes see what you didn't see before. Right? Develop the safe working method. They develop the safe working method. Give me a minute. I'm trying to admit somebody. Develop the safe working method is this one here, the control. You have to loosen the nuts to change your spare tire or to change the tire. But the safe working method is wear hand gloves. Operate the wrench or the wheel spanner using a consistent force and to take care, right? Implement the safe working method and then monitor to ensure that it is effective. But C rhythm is shown on a JSA. So in case you missed it, a safe system of work. Now you missed it because remember we leave the first slide and we came to the last slide, right? But a safe system of work is a JSA. In fact, a safe system of work is also a permit, right? A safe system of work, let's go back to that phrase, is just a safe way of doing the job. This job is changing a spare tire on the busy highway. But the safe system of work represents a safe way of getting that job done, right? And from the first slide, if you all saw it, there were two types of safe systems of work. You have, watch it here, there are two types of safe systems of work. Going back up here, right? So examples of safe systems of work, right? Or safe methods include a job safety analysis or JSA and a permit to work, right? So see if you understand some of this now. Really and truly, I could probably reflect on the exam question and the two questions they had, but let's read this again. The safe system of work is the integration of personnel, meaning it takes people to get this done. It takes people to fill out the form then, employees, managers, main contractors. That's what you're seeing here, competent people then, right? It takes people to fill this out to figure out what are the hazards, what's the risk, right? But they select the task, put the job steps, put the controls, assess the risk, right? So that's the idea with a JSA. A JSA would represent, right? Let's just go all the way back up. A JSA represents, watch this. A JSA represents an administrative control. And it's a way of controlling the risk, right? It's a way of getting the job done in a safe way. Look at here. Control, risk, control, risk, right? The JSA is a safe way of getting the job done, right? Tell me what you think. I could probably reflect on the past paper, but I don't have it though, because I tell you, it'd be kind of hard for me to find out. But when I say hard, time consuming to see if I could look. I know for sure that probably wasn't asked this year as yet. I can't remember a JSA question for the year. I can't even remember what year it had it, but I know it had one or two, right? Tell me if you have any questions on this. If you read through the note, you'll see I spoke about how to develop the JSA, but we went to the end, right? What is involved? Task, risk assessment, coming up with a safe method of working. Who needs to be involved? Everybody, right? In preparing a JSA, managers, supervisors, principal designers is a phrase in England, right? That talks about actually a principal designer is a HSE coordinator. It's a funny phrase. It's a phrase they use in England. If you want to write that down, I mean, just in case you're reading back this slide and you think you'll be confused, the principal designer is the safety. You might wonder why, why did they even not say that? Well, the thing is they used to say safety. But then they updated this law and then they changed the name from HSC coordinator to principal designer. It sounds funny, doesn't it? Huh? Like, why? But it's a law in England. It's a law called the CDM regulations. I hope I'm telling you all the correct. Yeah, the principal designer is. Yeah, the principal designer is the HSC, is the health and safety person. There's the principal contractor, which is the main contractor, but the principal designer is not a blueprint kind of guy. The principal designer is actually the safety. It's a funny phrase. Anyway, the point is, other than the phrase, a lot of people are involved in developing a JSA. So they say get everybody involved, employee representatives, managers, whatever. And we're gonna have to stop it right here because it's probably just around, getting to 20 past 10 anyway, right? So when I say stop, I'll just read on these two slides and I reflect on the question for you, all right? So It's a legal responsibility to inform employees of the hazards and risks contained in the safe system of work. So once you do it, inform the employees about the hazards and risks. It enables workers to be aware of what is required of the safe systems of work. And by the way, you need to train the employees on how to follow the safe system of work, right? Training should cover why is a safe system of work needed? Well, it will save your life. I mean, this is just changing a tire, but what if it was a GSS are used in throughout the companies anyway, right? What is involved in the work? The precautions needed to make the work safe, instructions and training, details of any permit to work systems that may be needed. Well, to permitters next week, how to use any necessary PPE, the emergency action to take, all of that is part of your controls. And whatever you put here, if it was, like cleaning some sort of vessel, which requires a permit, but the workers will need to be trained then. You can't just say wear a respirator, but they have never been trained to breathe in the respirator, right? You can't just say emergency rescue, but they have never done a drill, or the worker getting in the vessel have never practiced coming out of that vessel, right? Any monitoring to be done, such as dust measurement before work or after the work, right? So we stop it right there in permit to work. And like I said, chapter 3 have about one good snow. Chapter 3 have next week Saturday still. We have some stuff to finish off in chapter 3, right? What I think I want to do from next week, right? We could probably start to do some past papers in class. I know I give some for assignments and stuff, right? But we can probably start to do, like around that 10 o'clock, I want to pause a bit and start to do 1 or 2 questions in class, right? Anyway, I was going to mention to you, watching the time too. I wanted to tell you the past paper question. So the past paper question that came on this, here the good news, right? I don't know if you want to write it down. Remember, I don't know how to tell you. I don't think 2 is a trend there, but 2 was the questions that came, right? So the past paper question is on page 53. They asked it straight from the book. They asked, what factors would you consider in developing a safe system of work? If you have page 53, you'll see it. I have it somewhere on the slide. Oh, there's the same heading, sorry, the development process, right? So what factors to consider when developing a safe system of work? And then the other past papers is be easier. So like what you consider is C rhythm then. Select the task, right? Record the steps. The same thing on the table, that's what they wanted you to say. But the other questions were easier. The other questions was the comment. Comment on the JSA, comment on if you felt the safe system of work was effectively implemented. That's such an easy question. Because remember, you all have the case study. You could go and read it and see where they said the employees did not understand the JSA. So if the case study said the employee didn't understand the JSA, you could say, in my opinion, the safe system of work was not communicated to the 2 workers. As mentioned in the case study, they have asked for training and they did not receive the training on the JSA, right? So there are 1 or 2 questions that just keep that in mind. I've just told you how that other one could come, but it's not a go-to now. But remember, when you're preparing for exam, we spoke about NEBOSH and changing your life. Prepare for everything, right? The most I could do is tell you what the trends is, but I could be dead wrong. The point is, even if I'm dead wrong, I made my effort to teach you the best I could. So it's up to you now to get it the right way, right? I'm going to stop here because I want to, call the roll and get about 2 minutes before the next class